I've all but given up on the notions of productivity in the way that it's actually discussed in the academic literature. I look at this all of the time, and it's a simple economic logic that if you induce people, right, you have the right incentives, you make sure that you train them right, all these different things, that they're going to be more and more productive and their efficiency is going to increase increasingly more over time. And the notion is really there's this idea of the learning curve. I just spent an entire conference or spent a couple of days talking and thinking about the learning curve. And a lot of it I've actually given up on in terms of the notions of that you can continuously improve over time. And I think if you were to talk to people that study this would agree. And the problem, though, that often happens is that people translate simple notions that you can continuously improve over time to the real world. Um, and what ends up happening, and I think it's simply because we don't have a long track record on people per se, but what ends up happening is that most people will reach a certain level of whatever that productivity is or whatever you might say. And that level actually does not change on a day-to-day basis. What changes is not what you are doing. What changes is actually the technology around you. What changes is the way that organizations actually are structured. And it has little to do with individuals per se. And it's interesting when I think about this because this is a classic level of analysis issue that, the focus almost always is on how can we incentivize, how can we motivate, how can we get individuals, people to work harder, faster, stronger. But in reality, it has nothing to do with that. In reality, it has everything to do with how do we transform the organization? How do we change the technology that's available to allow people to do better? And it's not going to happen with these factors, organizations, maybe even institutions, maybe even technologies. They don't change typically very quickly. They change over a matter of decades. You can really see differences with them, but they don't change that much. The individuals that are within these things, that's why it's called the level of analysis, change very little in terms of what's going on. Maybe they have different cultural norms and things like that that evolve over time, but the actual individuals are really not changing that much. And what this does when you go through these experiences or discussions about productivity all of the time and the focus on productivity, what it does, it erodes people's mental capacity. And it goes through all of the sort of psychological factors of you feeling that you're not good enough, you feeling that you're behind. All of these things kind of pop up when you focus on productivity and productivity alone and a particular outcome alone. And instead, what you should be doing is taking a step back, not worrying about productivity. This is the paradox behind it all, right? A paradox is essentially, it means one thing and it means another at the same time. Is that if you want to become more productive, and in fact, there's research and creativity is one of the sort of interesting artifacts that we know. If you want to become more productive and create more things, you don't focus on on performance or making more. But what you end up doing, and what you need to often encourage, is fix all of the well behind all of that. right? So it's not focusing, is not saying we're going to incentivize and pay people more and all of that kind of stuff, but figure out how to make people feel more comfortable, more accepting of other people, more open to experiences. Um, all of those things are really, really important to increase productivity in the long run, but it's completely counter because it's never a discussion about productivity. It's a discussion about how can we get other people, and essentially, this is what I often think about. How do we get other people to spread love, right? Like, I think we understand what it means to spread love or, share goodness, whatever it is, right? Like whatever term that you leave, and it's really wishy-washy, right? Um, but it's wishy-washy. There's specific terms to a lot of these kind of things. Um, but the general principle is almost always the same thing. It's how do we get people to feel quiet confidence? How do we get people to feel comfortable in their own skin? How do we get people to feel that there's not that much chaos that's going on around the world, and feel that they have a certain amount of certainty, a certain amount of, I can get up and I can do this every single day. It's when all of that stuff erodes is actually when productivity truly erodes. So it's never a discussion about how can we make it more productive, but it's about a discussion of how can we get people to feel comfortable? How can we get people to, when they are doing something, just share ideas and how to actually improve, right? Pass things around where people are open to say, you know what, maybe we can do this a little bit better, and this is how we might actually do this a little bit better. But that's not a discussion about productivity ever. That is that's a discussion about caring for other people. And I know all of this is hard for many of us to hear because many of us really like to focus on, getting things done. At least I am that way. But and especially when I was younger, I would have been like, "Oh, what the hell is this? Like, who is this nut bar?" Um, but I think it is extraordinarily important. To give you an example in my family, um, when we do, when my kids do well, is not when we scream at them to do well, to do better. My kids do well when we say, can we actually solve this particular problem together? What is actually going on behind the scenes so that we can get back up and do this again? And it doesn't feel good, but over time, the fact that you are actually sharing the problem, sharing the issues, and collectively figuring out how to do this, it actually feels like a great experience when you're done. And that's ultimately what you have to work towards. It's not about performing and performing at a high level. It's about how do we have a shared experience where we all love each other. Sometimes it's frustrating, but we have a shared experience where we all love each other and move forward collectively. And the focus is not on grades, but the focus is, okay, how can we step forward and do better today than we did yesterday? And that's it. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.